Have you heard of the new trend of hosting an interview podcast so you can invite guests on and then sell them your services? Super fun. Podcast sales funnels are a thing, my friend, and I should know I was stuck in one. And I escaped, and you can too. So join me today. I'm going to help you spot a podcast sales funnel from a mile away and then evaluate it to see if it's still a good use of your time as a guest. Let's do this. Hey there, pitches. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Go Pitch Yourself. I am your host, Angie Trueblood. This episode, we're digging into another podcast trend, host inviting guests on to sell them on their own services. I have some thoughts, I have some experiences to share, and I have some red flags for you to be aware of. If you are new here, welcome. I am a podcast marketing expert, the founder of the Podwize group, which is a podcast guesting agency for B2B service providers, and I am a lover of live music. My favorite band, fun fact, is the Avett Brothers. Please let me know if you know them. My favorite show over the last couple of years was a Mumford & Sons concert that we went to pre-COVID. It was so good, although I felt like I was cheating on the Avett Brothers because I loved it so much. So let me know, do any of us have bands in common that we love? I would love to know who you love to listen to. If you're an OG listener, hello. Thank you for sticking with me. We are staring at 100 episodes still. I need to figure out a good plan to celebrate, but I am just so appreciative of you being with me on this long ride together. So for today's episode, I am recounting a couple of experiences I have had over the last, I would say 6 weeks, maybe. A few months ago, I pitched a podcast host and he said yes, woohoo. And then he proceeded to send me a series of 5 emails, all including a video that I needed to listen to get any information out of the email. And they had very little focus on the conversation that we would be having, with a much greater focus on how to guest on more shows, how to be a great guest on his show. And there was this really vague kind of occasional reference to the work that he does in his business that always alluded to something around the concept of networking and podcasting. Truth be told, I did not watch the videos at that point. It was just too much for me. I felt like it was almost like a welcome series when you subscribe to someone's email list to get a free download or something. And I didn't have the time to listen, even on super speed. I just really wanted the text in that type of email so that I could read over it and skim it, and I never got that. So fast forward, the evening before the interview, I ended up canceling. I know, I should have done it a long time before, but the proceed with caution internal lights were blinking very brightly for me, and even for my EA, who also couldn't navigate all of the emails that we were getting and really couldn't get a clear idea of what the interview was going to be about. I felt like I was being ushered down a conveyor belt, like into some sort of sales funnel. It didn't feel like an energetic fit. And at the end of the day, I still didn't really understand what his business was. And so a part of me prepping for interviews really has to do with me understanding the host's business so that I can speak to their audience and offer complimentary insight that their listeners would appreciate. And I felt very unprepared for what I was walking into the next day. But because I love you, I have gone back to listen to those videos at 1.5 to 2 speed, to be honest. I've poked around the website. I've looked at the show and some of the different websites that we have access to for our own pitching business, and tried to put words to what felt so off about those emails and that interaction so that you won't ever have to spend that much time in someone else's podcast sales funnel, unless you choose to. God bless you. Thinking that you might be preparing for a visibility opportunity, when in reality, what I felt like was going to happen is I had pitched to be a guest on this show, obviously to connect with him and his audience. But at the moment that I canceled, I felt like I was going to be showing up for a sales call. So I'm going to dig into the whole process that I was ushered through. I'm going to share with you a second experience with a different podcast host where I, again, was on the tip of walking into a podcast sales funnel. And then I'm going to share with you a couple of indicators that might let you know well ahead of the night before that you might not be showing up to really a podcast interview. You might be showing up for a discovery call. And I'm going to do all of that after our podcast Love of the Week. So today's podcast that I'm sharing with you is a fun one. It is called Your Doctor Friends. I had a discovery call with the host, Dr. Julie and Dr. Jeremy, or Julie and Jeremy, recently, and I love their show. So first of all, they are super cool doctors, probably not what you were imagining when you picture a doctor couple. Jeremy is actually the head doctor for the Chicago Bulls. Hello, how cool is that? And they do a lot of other stuff in their Chicago community with different sports teams. So one, that's just kind of cool. But the concept of the show teaches you how to sniff out the garbage and answers all the questions that we wish we could call or text our doctor friend if we had one. So I was looking over some of their most recent episodes when I was figuring out which episode to listen to first. And even in some of the most recent topics, there were topics about concussions, which is super interesting to me because my daughter rides horses, whether or not gluten is bad for you. And there was an episode on Ozempic. If you know, you know. So definitely pop over and check it out. It's called Your Doctor Friends with Julie and Jeremy. I love their energy, and I think you'll really like their podcast. So to pick up where we left off with our podcast sales funnel, I pitched the show, got a lot of emails with videos linked in them, fairly long. Definitely it was a sequence of emails, so it wasn't anything that was personalized to me, my expertise, or just me as a specific person, right? Everyone who signed up for an interview got this entire series of emails for sure. So that kind of started me off feeling a little, not totally sure about this. First of all, I hate watching videos when I can't speed up, and I could speed up these videos, but the information was like embedded in the video and I couldn't get to it quickly. So I really like to skim emails and to pull the information out of them, and I did not have a way to do this. And yet I proceeded with caution. The days leading up to the interview, I still didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what questions I would get. There was a "What Will I Ask You" video. I'm eye-rolling at the video again, with all due respect. And so I reached out to Courtney and said, hey, can you find out what questions he's going to ask me on this interview? And she literally emailed the team, got an email back that we sent an email with a video in it and linked to the video again. Damn it. I just wanted it written out like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So for you, again, my listener, I have since gone back to listen to these videos. I actually canceled that night. So I think we got the email with we sent what the video will be. Here's the video again, like 2 or 3 days before the interview. And it was the night before. I really started kind of poking around on his website and got the real sense that this was not really going to be a visibility opportunity. It may have been, who knows? Part of me wishes I would have gone through it to see if there would have been an impact, but I just couldn't, like in my heart, I just couldn't do it. And so that night I just emailed and said I'd had something pop up and I was unable to do the interview, and profusely apologized for canceling so late, because that is kind of a jerk move, if you will. So I looked at the videos, and the whole idea of how they were prepping me to be a guest on their show was that he would be geeking out about my area of expertise, and he wanted to really give his audience what they wanted from me. wanted to go down the rabbit hole of what I cover, what I'm an expert at, and provide high-level content to his audience that would hopefully lead to more connections between his audience and me. Again, super general. It didn't say anything about, I want to talk about how you can be a great podcast guest, or I want to talk about how you can pitch yourself to be a guest on other people's show. It wasn't anything aligned to what I am perceived to be an expert at. It was all general stuff. Other pieces of that video shared that he wanted to talk about the impact I have in the world, what my company looks like, what's the problem that I'm trying to solve. So really, again, high level, general questions that you could ask to anyone, not really angling the show to serve his specific audience with my specific expertise. So I did feel better once I watched the video because I was like, okay, I still don't quite know what this conversation is going to be about. I guess it's one where I could have taken it in any direction that I wanted based on his audience, but I really wasn't clear on who that audience is. And fun fact, that's because it's not really about the audience. It is more about likely. This is all me perceiving it, right? But because I didn't go through with the interview. But I really do feel like it was more about me having a conversation with him to likely offer me some of the services that they share. And there were different videos, of course, on the page, like on the different emails sharing what they do. And it was all about this high-level introductions for decision makers, for high authority consultants is who they work with, and service providers, helping them to put two people in the same room so they start doing business together. And really what I gathered after reading some of the testimonials, and I actually knew some of the people that were giving testimonials, they were sharing how, and this was testimonials for working with the company, how their podcast had helped them generate conversations with people who then became clients that helped earn them a certain revenue number. So it was all about this concept of host a podcast, have people on as guests so that you can have a conversation with them and then likely close them on whatever it is that you offer, which I'm not adamantly opposed to that model. It's just the way that it is done. And it just felt so inauthentic. And I felt it was like I wasn't seen in that lead up to the interview. It was not about me as an expert. It was more about me as someone coming into this funnel and just seeing how I shake out on the call, whether or not we would be a good fit. Hi, friend. Have you finally gotten to the point where the word hustle makes you roll your eyes because it feels so foreign to how you're able and willing to work, but you're not sure of the alternative? In her podcast, Success with Soul, my friend Kate Kordsmeyer gets to the very root of why hustle mentality does a disservice to you and your business and what you can do instead. As a former journalist who sold her health and wellness blog for multiple six figures, I love how Kate blends online business strategies and soulful marketing advice for entrepreneurs who value relationships, mindfulness, and health just as much as they value strategic action and practical tips. In episode 3 of the Success with Soul podcast, Kate squashes the idea of hustling and instead offers the key components of a sustainable business, including play, creativity, and rest, and how to tap into both the masculine and feminine energies in cycles and seasons. If this approach to business sounds refreshing to you, I highly recommend you hop on over to the Success with Soul podcast, episode 3, Why I Don't Believe in Hustle, and give it a listen. I actually had another experience very similar recently. So all of this happened in the span of 6 weeks. And so one reason I'm recording is, are y'all seeing this? Are y'all getting stuck in these podcast sales funnels? Please tell me, friend. So this second podcast sales funnel that I was stuck in did things a little bit differently, which I do appreciate a couple key pieces that I will point out to you. So I got an email that said, Susie Q, I'm going to protect her right now, invited you to be a guest on this top 100 podcast. So a friend of mine, a colleague in this space, I assume, gave them my name, which I'm going to check with that because I wonder if they just looked on both of our podcasts and saw that we had guested on each other's show. That will be interesting. But it basically said, like, this is kind of weird, but Susie Q recommended that we reach out to you to be a guest on our podcast. I will tell you there's a lot of different font sizes, emojis. There's a lot going on in this email. I'm looking at it right now. And it says that this person thought that you would be a good guest. Now, they do give me the option to totally unsubscribe in the email. So it's like, if this is basically chapping your ass, then click here to unsubscribe. And then it is funny because it says the name of the person and it's like, you can reach out to them if you are angry in a funny way. So that was kind of interesting. They let me know that we are not being subscribed to their email list. It's just a referral list. And then says, like, if you are interested in coming on the show, then this is what you can do. So you get to click a link and you can be on one of their top 100 podcasts. So there's a couple of them. Again, it doesn't say what the podcast is about, which is kind of weird. And I guess when I click, I'm going to go look now for you. When I click on the link, it's basically, are you a six-figure entrepreneur with a podcast? Do you want to be featured along other rockstar guests like you? It doesn't really say what you would be talking about. Again, it's just really general. Like, do you want to be on our big podcast? Yes, please sign up for this. So that was the first email I got. And then I think about a week later, I got another one and it was a recommendation. We ended up unsubscribing from this one, but it was basically a reminder, if you're an entrepreneur who meets these criteria, we've got 3 interview spots available on our show for next Monday. So it's kind of adding in that level of scarcity, like, please come on here, but I can only take a couple of you. Again, it feels really salesy. It's not personalized. It's not saying what I want you to talk about. It's just saying, come on our show, which is a red flag, my friend. So I give this one a little bit more props. Well, and granted, I had actually scheduled with the other one. And so this one gives me an out, which I appreciate, which is kind of funny if you think about it, because typically if people are invited authentically to be on a podcast, often it's not something that you would want to unsubscribe from. So I guess that is a little bit of a weird twist on that ability. It just felt a little easier to get out of it. Granted, I had not scheduled, but I did appreciate the out. But again, the red flag, it's not personalized to me or my expertise at all. I guess first off, what's my take on a podcast sales funnel? I'm not adamantly opposed to it. Even Megan Doherty on Our Conversation talked about that can be a reason that you host a podcast. That can be one of the goals of your show, is to have conversations who you would otherwise not be able just to call up and have a 30-minute conversation with, right? Also, Danny Osmond, the founder of Emerald City Productions, he has mentioned it as one way to use your podcast to help grow your business. So it is a thing. Although neither of those two friends of mine call it a podcast sales funnel. I don't know that the other two whose funnel I got stuck in call it that, but that's what I feel like it was. So the key differentiator is that it can be done in a way that feels authentic and personal and cozy and not like you are just a cog in their funnel wheel. And that is how I felt in these two experiences. So then the question is, for you, my podcast guest friend, how do you spot a podcast sales funnel? How do you vet it to know if it's a good fit for you? And how do you say no, thank you? Which I actually would not take my advice for saying no, thank you, because I waited until the last minute. So we're going to skip that. I'm not going to tell you how to say no, thank you. I think you can just figure it out on your own. So what do you look out for? So for me, the common theme was that the reach out was not specifically about me or my expertise. It was all about their show, the exposure that I could get from being on their show, and it's not personalized around my unique topic or story at all. And really, that's because it's not that important. And how this model works, my story, my content is not that important. Number 2, the show doesn't have a clear focus, and it's really hard for you to figure out how you would describe the show, right? Because the topics are all over the place, because it is more about getting the business owner on the interview than actually sharing content. So some of these types of shows share more of journey stories, like the behind the scenes of growing a business, which in general, I don't love generalized podcasts that have tons of different types of hosts on, especially if you're a service provider in the B2B space. Like, you want your audience to show up, not thinking they're going to just listen to a journey. But I love when an audience shows up thinking they're going to learn about or be a little bit educated on something that's pretty specific. So I don't love generalized podcasts to begin with. And often in these podcast sales funnels, they are very broad topics. Number 3, and this is a really tactical, a really easy to apply. A lot of times they are pumping out daily episodes. So look at the frequency with which these shows are pumping out content. And if it's every day, one of them was even weekends, to me, that's a red flag, because you can't effectively prepare. Well, you can if that's all you do, right? But typically, if you run a business, you can't effectively prepare for an interview where you want to have done your background on your guest and then edit and produce and market the show and crank that out every single day. But you know what you can do every single day is have discovery calls and record them and publish them as a podcast, which is what I feel like these shows kind of do. Another thing to look out for, typically a lot of these shows have pretty low ratings, especially based on the number of episodes that they're producing. So if they have 1,000 episodes and 47 reviews, to me, there's a disconnect there, and it's likely that the audience is not super engaged. Something else, it's hard for you to know what topic of yours would best benefit the listener. So it's not like I just go on shows and talk about how to write a great pitch or how to be a great guest. There's a million different conversations I could have with a podcast host, and I shift those based on who the listener is. But if I can't see from doing my research of looking at the show, looking at past guests, looking at their description of the show, if I don't know who the listener is, then I can't figure out what is the best topic that I would be putting forth on this show. That's a red flag. And that is really your sign, because it's not about the listener, which is why I cannot imagine a time when being in a podcast sales funnel would be a great visibility opportunity for you, right? It might be an opportunity for you to find a service provider or a product who could help you out. So as you kind of get pushed along the funnel, if you start to recognize, oh, wait, I really like what this person is doing. This is something that I might be able to do for my business. Great, keep it going. But if you went into that opportunity thinking, I want to share my expertise with an audience that I get a good sense of who they are, I really want to connect with them, I really want to serve them, doing one of these types of shows is probably not going to check that box. In the off chance that the show is super niched and is talking to a specific type of listener, and you can tell that the audience is genuinely engaged and probably growing. So look at their socials, look at where they're posting their shows. Are people commenting, liking, engaging with that host? Then it may be worth your time, right? But do your due diligence with this so that, again, you're not wasting your time being stuck in this campaign, and goodness only knows what the follow-up sequence is like after you record. So again, proceed with caution, my friend. This is what I want to know from you. Have you ever been a part of one of these podcast sales funnels as a guest? I would love to hear from you. I can share stories in a follow-up episode because I know I can't be the only one. I know there are many of you in my audience that guest just as often as I do. So I know you have run across it and I want to hear about it. So connect with me on LinkedIn at Angie Trueblood. Send me a connection request, but you got to send a message that's like, I was listening to your last episode. I love the conversation about podcast sales funnels, and I got a story for you. And then I'll accept it, and we will definitely connect in the DMs, and I will not put you in a LinkedIn sales funnel either. Okay, my friend? So Tell me all about it. I look forward to hearing your I look forward to hearing your stories, and I can't wait to talk to you again in 2 weeks. Until then, be well and be visible, my friend. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Go Pitch Yourself. If you found this episode to be helpful, friend, you would be blown away by what we can accomplish together. Here are 2 next best steps. 1, be sure to sign up for our bi-weekly newsletter. That is twice a month, if that term confuses you as much as it does me. Each week that our episodes drop, I send an action-focused email, including an insider tip of the week based on the work that we do behind the scenes in our clients' business. For example, a recent tip of the week included how to estimate how large a podcast audience is. To get access to this exclusive content, pop on over to the podwisegroup.com/pitches and sign up. As a special thank you, you'll get your first insider tip of the week as access to 6 pitches my team and I have sent that were accepted, including the core components of any great pitch. Number 2, schedule a call with me to figure out which of our services, if any, would be a good fit for you. We have a variety of ways to support you and your team in helping grow your business through podcast guesting, and I am pretty skilled at helping identify pain points and solutions. Hop over to the podwisegroup.com/services and grab a spot on my calendar at the bottom of the page.